Hello. I'm delighted to be here. Can we see and hear?
We can see your screen, Ed. Yep.
Okay, very good. Um, just a little agenda for the things I'll talk about here. A quick overview of the project and Dominion. Uh, Talk about a few of the challenges we faced as we implemented the project and how we overcame those, and how we got people to buy into the system. And then finally, a couple of ideas for where we want to take this thing next. So off we go. Um, First, we needed a snappy name for the system, so we had a contest. The winner was PACE, which stands for Planning, Accountability, Control, and Execution, which are very projecty sounding words that are forceful and appeal to upper management. So this was a good name for the system. We were replacing a fairly strong in-house system, but the system had reached the end of its life and the end of its capabilities. Um, in the beginning, as we first started talking to PROJILITY, we started with the big full vision of how this whole thing was going to work. As our plans collided with reality, we made some adjustments, pulled back a few things, and focused on really some of the basics that we wanted to deliver, which were high-level project metrics and labor and expense management. We're integrated with our SAP system where we pull actual costs and hours, and then the Power BI part of the system ties it all together and is in fact where most people who are not planning projects live in the Power BI portion of this. A little bit about Dominion Energy. Um, our business is to deliver reliable, affordable, clean, and safe energy. If I were giving this presentation 5 years ago, you probably would have not seen the word clean in there. The energy sector is really changing extremely rapidly, and you see us focusing on reaching net zero carbon emissions by 2050, key part of Dominion's strategy. And to get there, a huge focus on innovation, and that innovation and change translates directly into IT projects. So it's an exciting time to be a project manager at Dominion, where we're the third largest solar producer in the country. We're working on building what will become the largest offshore wind implementation in the Western Hemisphere. We run the largest pumped hydro storage facility, which is really the largest battery on Earth. And every time we build one of these things or infrastructure to support it, it turns into an IT project. So each of us in the PMO can have a line of sight directly from the day-to-day work we do to things we read about in the newspaper and hear our CEO say. Um, as far as a little bit of metrics about Dominion, we have 7 million customers, 16 states, 17,000 employees, market capitalization and sales. And then as far as the IT organization, there are about 1,200 of us in IT. And when I say IT, that includes both the application side of the house as well as the infrastructure side of the house. Application is broken into little IT departments, for example, a customer service IT department that focuses just on our billing and call center kind of stuff, or a generation that focuses on all the generation systems. Infrastructure, of course, what you typically think of as IT. And then our PMO itself, we have right now about 54 project managers, varies a little bit, 823 active projects covering about $500 million. We add about 40 new projects a month, and the project size ranges from $100,000 up to our largest one in flight right now is $180 million complete replacement of a massive customer system. So one additional note, we have 54 official project managers in the PMO. We also have what I call accidental project managers, people in other, say, supervisory manager roles who also run perhaps more upgrade kinds of projects or things that are not as visible, say, as other projects. And those are managed through our system as well, but are managed by approximately another 50 people outside the PMO. These are 50 additional users of our system. As far as the background of the system itself, the PMO was set up in 2013, and we built an in-house system then that was Excel-based, SharePoint on the back end. It still pulled in SAP actuals, but MS Project was not really part of the equation then. Along the line, we merged with Questar and Scana, which is when our project management office really continued to, or started to grow to the size it is today. We focus a huge amount on labor cost management. Labor is the biggest part of our of the expense on an awful lot of our projects, and we are very, very focused on capital labor. Capital, as important as it is in accounting in most organizations, in a regulated utility as we are, it's a really big deal because investment in capital drives an awful lot of what the regulators allow us in terms of return on investment. In terms of project numbers, we're always interested in the basic, vital signs. What's the budget? In other words, what do we want to happen? What's the projection? What do we believe actually is going to happen? Does it match the budget? And the actuals, what have we spent to date? And then we're looking at that mostly from a vendor perspective, but from a labor perspective, vendor stuff, if we bring in an integrator like an Accenture or somebody, hardware and software, if we purchase a system like, I don't know, MS Project Online, and then there are various surcharges and interest fees that we track in there as well. And we had really built out some pretty robust earned value based metrics, and I'll talk a little bit more about that further down. Some of the challenges. So although the old system was getting long in the tooth, it was difficult to use. It got stuck a lot and we had to jiggle the handle to get it to download files and things. It worked. It had set expectations for what kind of data would be available. So we had to, when we started this project, we had to make sure we didn't leave anybody in the lurch with the new system. A real challenge for us was getting actual data from SAP, and this was the first big, crisis about our implementation, was as we began to understand that our SAP actual data, in other words, if I charge an invoice from Accenture to my project, it doesn't go in at the task level. We only track in SAP up at the top project level. And there was no real easy way to spread that actual data down through the individual tasks in MS Project. So we spent a lot of time with PROJILITY, and fortunately, PROJILITY brought a lot of experience to the table on this and helped us understand what some other folks had done, which was simply not to, and there are a couple of ways to approach it. The way we chose was simply to not deal with the actuals in MS Project itself, but to integrate it all in Power BI, which I'll show you in just a minute. And the data model to do this got very complex as well, looking for key fields in SAP that we could match up with, the project ID in our world and matching that up with various, SAP calls them WBS numbers, but in our case, they're project numbers. Syncing the IT employee list was difficult. We had employees coming over from the Active Directory, but it didn't have all the information we needed. We need to pull some HR information from SAP. We had contractors in an entirely different system, so that was tricky. We had some security. We're extremely security conscientious sort of company, and so getting this hybrid on-prem and cloud system to work together seamlessly had its challenges. Doing the migration, so we didn't really have the option of a sort of staged rollout. We had to get off of the old SharePoint system that our legacy system was based on. So we really had a fairly short window of time to get from our old system to our new system. And we had hundreds of projects that needed to be migrated out of hundreds of individual spreadsheets. I mentioned 100 users with a wide range of MS Project skills. Honestly, 10 of those 100 users were probably in the strong to expert level. Probably another 10 were casual users, and the rest of them avoided using MS Project at all costs if possible. So we had some work to do there. And then a challenge was Project Online didn't fit into any of our neat IT administrator center of excellence models. It's not quite a desktop app. It's not quite SharePoint. It's not quite a database. So we spent a lot of time wrangling responsibilities for system administration. Finally, and I didn't even think about it until the previous presentation, one additional challenge in my concurrent thing here was also we're doing all this remotely under the COVID world. We had our PACE go live running at the same time that we had our merger with the SCANA PMO and pulling systems out of their Clarity system, and this big enterprise level SharePoint migration to the cloud. So a lot happening at once, but it made it exciting. Here's the architecture we ultimately came up with. I guess I'll start across the top here. Project Online or PWA, what I'm thinking of is the web portion of it. We've got all the project metadata there, you know, who's the sponsor, who's the director, who's the account manager, what business area, what strategic category, that kinds of stuff. And all the normal stuff you would do in a SharePoint setup for a project, including document libraries, lists of things like risks and issues and things like that. So we set all those up as templates in Project Online. Then in the client, we're using the client purely for forecasting. So we forecast labor, vendor, software, and hardware, and those numbers go in on a month-by-month granularity from beginning of the project to the end. SAP is pulling down the actual versions of those same numbers. So here's the forecast, here's what actually happened. We pull all that together in the PROJILITY Hammerhead Data Mart or data warehouse, which we are running on site. And then that drives our Power BI reporting. A little note over here to the side is it's really easy with Project Online to extract data for Excel and other data sets, but we just pull some real quick data out to Excel on a regular basis and have some scripts that run through there and look for things that we need to perhaps prod the project managers about. They might say nag. Have you updated your forecast within the last month? Do you have a project that should have started and is not showing a status of started yet? You've got some defunct team members in here. Do you need to replace those with people who are currently at the company? And so these QA and reminder emails go out just on a regular basis and are a big part of keeping everybody engaged and keeping the data quality high. Right. So here's just a quick little couple of snapshots out of screenshots. I've added a few more screenshots at the end. I won't walk through them, but they will be part of the presentation, which hopefully you guys can look at and see how we're running this thing. So each project has a primary MS Project Online instance, right? That's the way Project Online works, but we are using that online instance specifically for staffing forecasts and expenditure forecasts. And so here you see people going in and maybe pasting in hours by person or vendor expenses going in. We expect to pay a $45,000 invoice in April or whatever it is. And to do all this stuff, we started out asking all the users to do a lot of this stuff in native MS Project. And we quickly discovered that some of the project challenged folks were just not going to get there. So we stepped back and we built this toolbox in Visual Basic for Applications, VBA. And in essence, if you're a project manager and you need to get into MS Project to do these forecasts, everything you need to do is done by one of these buttons. So if you're doing something that doesn't start with one of those buttons, you shouldn't be doing it. So this makes it very easy for me to come in here. Apologize for the jargon. CLC in our world stands for capital labor credit. Just think labor there. If I need to add a person to my project, I just click this button, comes up here. I can type Ned Henson up here, find my name, and I can add Ned to my project at 20%, and it spreads the hours across there. Again, if we're doing on the expense side, if we've just signed a statement of work for a contract, fixed price, we might have delivery milestones. The project manager would enter those delivery milestones in the expense section. And then we have this publish, check-in, and close button. This actually does all the basic publish and check in just like Project does, but this also puts a timestamp in a field so that I know the project manager has reviewed the project, and I can keep track of people who may need to get in and review, who may need additional training, any other kinds of issues people might be having. All right, that's a lot, but that's 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 the meat and potatoes of the system from the project manager's perspective. Um, a little side note here. So when we're talking about doing detailed Gantt chart, work breakdown structures, we actually are doing those in separate standalone MS project files that are uploaded to the SharePoint site for each project, not in the main system. Again, this gets back to that whole challenge with SAP actuals and not being able to spread those actuals across these tasks. Um, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Um, so our rationale for making the decisions that we did, first, we're running a lot of different kinds of projects. We're running big Gantt chart type application projects where our project manager builds a big project plan, schedule, and executes to it. We have vendors doing project plans and running projects from outside our system. We have infrastructure projects that are kind of cookie cutter that are just run out of Excel checklists and things like that. So we are not assigning tasks to individual people out of MS Project currently. Um, and then what? Oh, yeah. In a lot of ways, we had to build the system so that we could get, if you will, the least common denominator of information out of every single project, no matter what kind of project it was. And so we had to build for the simplest case. So that again, that drove a lot of our rationale here. Couple other things. We knew that doing time entry in MS Project was not going to be would not really work here. Our time entry is very complicated. There's some regulatory aspects to it. It's done in SAP, and we weren't going to attack that. If we weren't really ready to here we go. We weren't really ready to bring all the team members in as users yet because we're talking about training and change management for hundreds of people rather than just the project managers that we were working with. So these were the choices we made, and in hindsight, I think we would make the same ones. So how did we get people to adopt it? We started with PROJILITY-driven training. Grace was doing the training for us. She had also done our implementation. She was patient beyond words, and we had one person who took, I believe we offered 10 instances of the all-day MS Project training, and I believe this person took all 10. And then we focused in on lots of reinforcement training. As we learned where people were having trouble, we would circle back and provide mini classes for that. We would do little half-hour mini sessions once a week and sort of help desk where people could drop in and we would answer questions and so forth. We did job aids that we focused in on just, help. I need to get started. How do I do that? And here's a job aid for that. The toolbox was a big deal. The simplified approach and just thinking about we need to update hundreds of project forecasts every month. This needs to be simple, fast, and not burdensome to the project managers. And one really helpful thing here was the fact that because our directors and sponsors and account managers were already used to seeing budget numbers and projection numbers, forecasts, and performance stuff, they already had an expectation. So if they didn't see something, they were going to help me push the project managers to get the data in, get it up to date, and keep it accurate. The automated QA checks were a big deal, and constant nagging. If we weren't here noticing when people don't update things, I think there would be pockets of places where people were not being as attentive to the data as we would like. A couple of things for going forward. We'd really like to get back to some of the earned value metrics that we had before. These were important. So this is an earned value graph below for just an individual project, and it shows, here's what we're trying to hit. Each of these is an annual budget that gets us there. Here's the money we've actually spent. Here's the money we're planning to spend. Here's the work we've gotten done. It was a very good tool to sit down with a sponsor and say, here's been the history of this project. Here's what it looks like. And you can see right now our forecast has us landing on budget about the end of the December of 2019. So we hope to reestablish some of that kind of stuff. And I think we'll be able to do that with Power BI. Just because we set this stuff up without the individual team members in project and without the Gantt chart and schedules in project, there's nothing in there that precludes us from putting that stuff in. And we'd like to start to do some pilots where we really build the full MS project plan out, find out what works and what doesn't, and see if it's something we might want to push out more. That'll be mostly our serious top 10 project managers with that. And I would expect us to always have some sort of hybrid environment with that. We got a few tweaks to the toolbox and reporting. The reporting came from PROJILITY, really almost ready to go. And then we've been doing some tweaking since then as we learn some subtleties in the numbers and get some user feedback about, oh, we'd like to see this differently, and just other ideas we've had. And then finally, one of the things we're going to have to look at is data archiving. We used to run into issues in our old system with SharePoint exceeding a certain threshold and performance would struggle. And we have so many projects in the system already that we really want to start to offline some of the older completed material, canceled projects, and so forth. All right, I believe that is it. Just for your entertainment, I've included a few screenshots of sanitized for our protection of just what the system looks like when people are in there, what some of our Power BI dashboards look like, and some labor stuff. Again, when you see CLC, capital labor credit, and some forecasting or resource utilization and forecasting there. So I believe that is it.